emphatic about that.
I'm as emphatic about that as anything that confronts and challenges and damages this country today. I wish Dick Cheney and his daughter Liz would go away. I realize that we have a Constitution and a Bill of Rights, and it says they have a right to do whatever they want to, but I'm frankly concerned because Dick Cheney ought to be in jail for war crimes.
But still, there does seem to be something a bit beyond the pale about Petraeus's Al-Qaeda versus ISIS plan. Joining me now for more on this is Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell and distinguished adjunct professor of government and public policy at the College of William and Mary. Colonel, welcome back. It's great to have you with us again.
Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So, using Al-Qaeda to fight ISIS, is this a crazy idea or is there some rationality to this?
I like the way you characterized it. It's a crazy idea. But it's not, as you also characterized, something we haven't done before. The Mujahideen in Afghanistan, as you pointed out, and I'd also point out right now, there are people in this country who are taking money from $30,000, $40,000 at a whack and advocating for the Mujahideen al-Haq, the MEK, one of the most brutal terrorist organizations in the world, because they are the enemy of our enemy, Iran.
Right. Well, and just a slight digression here, but let's talk about that for a second. The MEK was on the list of, or MEK, was on the list of terrorist organizations, the U.S. list, and you can't do business with them, you can't help them out, you give them money, you end up in Guantanamo or something. And then this huge lobbying effort happened, and, you know, delist the MEK, and, you know, you see these ads on TV, and people don't know what delist means, they didn't know what MEK was, but these are people who are terrorists against the Iranians. Do I have that right?
That's right.
So
that's right.
What's the history of the MEK and our involvement with them? How did we become good buddies with a terrorist group?
Well, we've been bitterly opposed to them because they were, amongst other things, truly brutal, but they were supported by Saddam Hussein. They were physically and physically supported by Saddam Hussein against his arch enemy, the Persians, Iran.
Right.
Donald Rumsfeld even kept them away from doing anything in Iraq. He essentially put them in a camp north of Baghdad, and that was of some contention with the Israelis and others who wanted them unleashed, as it were, on Iran. But Donald Rumsfeld saw that it was fraught with all kinds of problems, turning these people, brutal terrorists that they were, loose as if we were supporting them logistically and otherwise, weapons and so forth, and giving them free rein against Iran. Now, suddenly, they have become delisted, as you said, because we find them helpful. Some do anyway. And we're, you know, allowing them to lobby in Washington and so forth. It just goes to support the idea. Americans abominate this idea, especially those who are black and white people. But it just goes to show one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yeah. Yeah, an old cliche, but a true one.
Yes.
For that matter, I mean, you know, King George III referred to George Washington as a terrorist.
Yes, I wonder what they thought.
Because because George Washington's troops would not stand in line when they were shooting, right?
Exactly.
They hid behind trees. Oh my God, we can't have that.
And we forget 60% of the colonialists were probably Tories or Tory sympathizers. Mm-hmm. So what did they think of us? Us being the revolutionaries. We were terrorists.
Right. We were and the minority too in the country. Remarkable. So, do you think that President Obama, or back to this idea of using terrorists to fight terrorists in the Middle East, is there any evidence that this is getting any traction in the White House, or is this just
I have heard rumors that there are people listening to it, people in the Pentagon and in the White House, security people, and I think that's farcical. I think it's very dangerous, too. I would point out that this is just the kind of thing we do that gives us this enormous blowback later. There is a direct line between our support for the Mujahideen, the training and arming of Al-Qaeda in particular in Afghanistan, and 9/11. And there will be a line, I assure you, between any support we give Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda-like elements in Syria and any future attack on the United States, overseas or here, by them. Right. It's just something that happens, and it's extremely dangerous to be playing with this sort of thing. And let me point out one other thing. I was on Bill Maher's show in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago, and Bill sometimes comes up with some winners. And he put on the board, 4.5 million men are under arms from Riyadh to Muscat, from Cairo to Tehran. 4.5 million men, and there are probably at the outside 45, 50,000 so-called Daesh, ISIS, ISIL, whatever. What's the problem?
Well, that's what Bernie Sanders was saying, was, you know, the third largest military in the world is Saudi Arabia. If there's a problem in that region, the third largest military in the world is right there.
Why would that military want to go after people that its government, or at least some elements in its government, are financing and supporting?
Right, right. So, what is the, at a certain level, you know, you look at the Middle East, and particularly post George W. Bush, post Iraq, and think, you know, okay, it's Humpty Dumpty. You know, it's like dropping an egg on the sidewalk. You can't put it back together again. But what is, you know, what options do we have? What are the alternatives? David Petraeus isn't a complete idiot, you know, or is he? I don't know.
I'm not going to field that one.
Yeah,
I think there are alternatives, and I think those alternatives feature first and foremost bringing Iran to the table. Iran has to be a part. So to this point, we are forbade, except in secret, Iran coming to any political solution deliberations about Syria. We have to get Iran to the table. Russia has to come to the table. Turkey has to come to the table. Erdogan has to be cautioned about his tyrannical tendencies. All these things have to take place before we can forge a political solution in Syria, and that's the only way we're going to find a solution. These migrants pouring into Europe now, we saw pictures of them on television today and yesterday coming out of Hungary and maybe going to Germany and so forth. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to solve this situation in Syria for humanitarian reasons, and also because it is destabilizing everything, and because we're responsible. The invasion of Iraq destroyed the balance of power in the Gulf and bred ISIS, Daesh. Some of the biggest and most powerful fighters within Daesh are Sunnis from Iraq, Republican Guard and so forth. We started all this.
Yeah. You mentioned that in order to solve this problem, we need to bring Iran into the deal, and we need to bring in Russia and these other countries. We just, you know, Russia just helped us put together an incredible deal that the president now with Barbara Mikulski has the ability to solidify. We already have those contacts. Are we moving in that direction? Is that the best solution for, you know, do the Iran deal, semi-normalize relations with Iran, and then, I mean, Iran soldiers are already in Iraq, are they not, fighting against ISIS?
They are, and I suspect that at least logistical support, arms and weapons, and possibly training, and even maybe some soldiers are in Syria backing Assad.
Dick Cheney.
The reports today, of course, were of Russians actually providing military assistance and support, including the latest frontline fighter bombers to Assad. And this is getting very, very dangerous.
Yeah, and this is where we really should be working with Russia,
yes,
not ending up in a proxy war with them.
Yes.
I'm
waiting
like Ukraine
for a U.S. or other coalition aircraft on a bombing mission out of Incirlik or wherever, being confronted by a Soviet fighter or
a Russian fighter.
Or a Russian fighter, yeah.
Yeah, that would not be a good thing. Dick Cheney was on CNN the other night talking about the Iraq war. Check out what he had to say.
Any regrets about going into Iraq?
No, it was the right thing to do then. I believed it then, and I believe it now.
No apologies?
No apologies.
Your thoughts on this?
Dick Cheney should go away. Dick Cheney has become a profane, an obscene blemish on the American reputation. Dick Cheney in 1998, as CEO of Halliburton, for example, said dramatically that sanctions don't work. He wanted the sanctions on Iran lifted. He wanted to do business with Iran. Now all of a sudden, Dick Cheney is not just for sanctions, he's for discarding the Iran agreement and essentially going back to sanctions, even more draconian sanctions. Dick Cheney is, in a word, an idiot.
Yeah, well, and I thought in '99 that Halliburton was even doing backdoor deals with
Probably
with
so.
Iran.
Probably so, under Dick Cheney's CEO-ship.
Yeah, yeah. You seem quite emphatic about that. Do you?
I'm as emphatic about that as anything that confronts and challenges and damages this country today. I wish Dick Cheney and his daughter Liz would go away. I realize that we have a Constitution and a Bill of Rights, and it says they have a right to do whatever they want to, but I'm frankly concerned because Dick Cheney ought to be in jail for war crimes. And if he were, and if accountability were really achieved in this country, we wouldn't have to listen to him except through prison bars.
Wow. Do you think that your old boss, Colin Powell, has similar feelings? Or
I won't speak for General Powell. He's a lot more calm and equitable.
Do you think others like you who were in the administration who knew these characters feel this way?
I know there's some. I know there's some at the CIA even who are very angry that no accountability has been achieved over the issue of torture, and that we are still frosting over, color coding, Kool-Aiding, whatever, these reports that are coming out about what the CIA did and didn't do.
Amazing stuff. Colonel, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.